Hello and welcome to the Wise Why. Wise Why? I can't even speak this morning. I love that when your own mouth trips you up. I am joined by Aina Gómez, who is someone that I absolutely adore. We met on an Oxep course, and from there we have met at networking events, and we've become what I believe is firm friends. But as usual, the Wise Why is not about Kirsty Vanderbilk. It is about my guest. So Aina, the floor is yours.
Good morning, Kirsty. Thanks for having me in the Wise Why this morning. Yes, as you say, I agree. I consider you a good friend, and I haven't met that many friends in Oxford ever since I moved. It's been a difficult time these last couple of years. Well, but with COVID and everything, it wasn't the easiest time to make friends, was it? So I'm very happy to be here today.
Oh, brilliant. So I know when we met, we were both on the Oxford course and we were doing, we were learning, weren't we? Because we met on one and then I think we met on another and we were learning how to put the foundations in place for our business. And one of the things that you inspired me to do, and I don't think I've ever told you this, was when I met you, you were changing your website. And I remember you talking about why. Now, at that point, I was really proud of my website. But you had some really good pointers that at the time I didn't really listen to. But a couple of months later, I did. And I remember when someone suggested that actually I completely revamp my website, I did. And I could hear your voice in the back of my mind. So I bet you didn't know that.
No, I didn't. That's great. But yeah, our websites always need revamping, don't they? It's that thing that you sort of leave like, oh well, I have a website, but actually it needs updating and revamping constantly, really, ideally. So and thinking of the user experience all the time. So yeah, I always think that my website is behind and needs doing.
No, I love yours. I love the varied work that you do because when I first met you, you were a photographer, and then I found out that you also run a theatre school. And then getting to know you, I found much more about how many languages actually do you actually speak?
Well, properly, I'd say like at this level, 3 really. But I speak a few more as well, and I can understand and manage in a few more, 3 or
So
4 more.
So what brought you to Oxford? Just because I'm being nosy.
So it's been a bit of a strange journey for me to get to Oxford. I actually first moved to the other place, Cambridge, from Spain, from Mallorca, and I moved to Cambridge. Really, I wanted to move to. Well, I thought the UK. I wanted to move outside of Spain because I hadn't up until that time ever lived abroad. I traveled, but for a limited amount of time, and then come back, or lived in Spain, but different in Barcelona, Madrid, and then always came back to the island because it has some form of, we call it the Rock, and the Little Rock, and it has some form of attraction that we always sort of come back, and that's what happened. I always sort of came back to Majorca. And I wanted to go abroad, but I wanted somewhere I could easily come back to, and I could speak the language properly. So that was, for me, that was the UK. So I sort of, this is a good place. So I went to Cambridge. I did know a couple of people there, which did help. And eventually, when I wanted to start a theatre school, that drove me to Oxford. Not that I couldn't have done that in Cambridge, but the path led me to Oxford. So, and that was where 6 years ago I'd visited and loved it. And that's what actually sparked my idea of moving to the UK. So I thought, things are coming into place. That's where I need to go. And I did. So that's how I ended up there.
That's just amazing because people think, and particularly, I've lived all over the UK, and I have, but I've not lived abroad. I go abroad because obviously Dennis is from Holland, so I go there a lot, and that's very different to going on holiday. I have to say that when I go on to Holland, I'm going to see my family, and it is different to going on holiday, because I'm not named by a beach or chilling, but it's interesting to think about what it was like. And it must have been very strange because you came over, 6 years ago, so before the pandemic,
Yeah.
and then the pandemic hit. That must have been a very difficult time for you.
What, moving or the pandemic?
Yes, well, just thinking about it, and I'm sorry to ask this question whilst we're live, but it must have been really strange with your family back in Spain and you in the UK, because I know that was incredibly difficult for Dennis and I, because we couldn't see anyone. We didn't see Oma and Opa for, I think it was about a year and a half.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't that long until I saw my parents, because the minute the borders were open, I travelled. But it was 2 years, or I think it was 2 years until I saw my brother and my sister-in-law and my nieces, because they live in the States. So, and they couldn't travel at first because of the controls, and then because of the it wasn't easy to travel from the States for a long time. So I didn't see them for 2 years, which is, the point in me moving to England and not, I don't know, Australia, was that I could fly back easily and see my family. So yeah, that sort of took that away, So it was hard, but with all the technology and everything, that wasn't the hardest part of the lockdowns. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the things I know that we've talked about before, particularly probably actually time we catch up, is the loneliness that sometimes we can feel, and that's actually partly why we've got such a good community where we are. We do try to support each other, particularly us women. There's a good group of us in the Abingdon, Oxfordshire area that really do support each other and grab each other when we see the other one falling, and that's something that I think is very special. I don't know if that would have happened before the pandemic, if I'm really honest. I don't know if we'd have caught each other the same way, because we're much more aware of it. Or maybe you disagree. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm Spanish. I think we are. It's in our DNA to be sociable, I think, and I'm being very, doing a sweeping generalization of
we're live. It's fine.
But we are as a culture, we are very sociable. So so yeah. But then I've, in the last 6 years, I've had all those ingredients of that have led me to leading a more lonely life. So I'm a single mom, I'm a widow, I'm an immigrant. I was new to a city twice, and I was running a business. So it's all those ingredients that make for a lonelier life. So so I have reached out to network. So because it's in my nature to do it anyway, but let alone if sort of the circumstances of life are pushing me against that, oh no, you have to be on your own, kind of, because of the path I've chosen.
So I'm going to say straight away, you are never alone. You've got me. You've also got a whole group of people who absolutely adore you. And more importantly, you are one of the bravest women I know. You have stood up firm. You are bringing your daughter up, and you are absolutely incredible. I didn't know you were a widow until 2 seconds ago. So, if I'd known that, I had no idea. But then I wouldn't ask that, would I? It's not something that I would come up to you and go, tell me your backstory. It's only because we're live that we're talking like this. There's things in friendship that we don't necessarily go and explore because we assume, which I hate that word, but we do assume we know.
Yeah.
But obviously, we don't always know.
It's true.
You are.
I am. And that's actually becoming a widow is a big reason why I became a family photographer. My daughter is now 9 years old, and her dad passed away, almost 9 years ago. So she was only a small baby, which meant that, when you have a baby, the last thing on your mind is taking photos, because you don't feel well, because time is this strange thing, that it no longer happens in the same way it used to. So that happened to us. We didn't take photos. So I have one family photo, one photo of us 3 together, which is a treasure, of course. A friend of mine really took it by chance at a party. She's not a professional photographer because she doesn't want to, but she could totally be. And she has all the knowledge and all the equipment, so she could totally be a professional photographer, but she doesn't want to. So it's a good, relatively good photo. Not the best time, not all of that. It doesn't matter because it's there. The photo is there. We have it. I have it. I've printed it out. It's big, and yeah. After a while, I realized how important that was. Not just for me, but especially for my daughter, having that memory, even though she was only a baby. But it doesn't matter, photos can actually encourage those memories to become real. It's very weird how the mind works, and how on MRI scans, those memories that can be induced by photography or other means, sometimes they are no different. They don't show up as any different as real memories. So
Wow.
yeah, so you're really literally creating memories when you're taking photos, especially when the children are little. So I thought it was really important, and that's how my career switched. I used to be a filmmaker. For a while, I did something completely different, which was run a language school, because I am very passionate about languages, and how to learn them and how to teach them. But yeah, I decided, you know what, this is what I want to do now. I want to help families capture those moments, and because of this, and then that sort of, I'm always open to how paths sort of open up for you. And while doing that, I've met lots of business owners. So I've also then gone on to a path of lots of personal branding photography to help them be more present, be more visible on their websites or social media or wherever it is they can be. And little by little, I've opened up those different paths to my business and what I like and enjoy doing for my clients. But it always comes from personal experience, and it always comes from what I honestly think is going to work.
I genuinely love that, and I've seen some of your work, and it is absolutely stunning. What I love about your photography is you capture the real person, and I hate my photo being taken, and it's interesting because people don't realise that I absolutely hate my photo taken. I will die and hide and do whatever I can because I hate it. Now, that's ridiculous because I go on camera, but I like being on camera because I'm moving and I'm animated. Whereas I always feel like a photo makes me just go, oh. But the memories and realizing how important the photos are for my daughter and going through those photos, and we go through them a lot. We do a lot of work with photos in the house. It's incredible. As you said, the memories, the stories behind the photo.
Yeah.
So I have to get better at going on the camera for photos. But we have, and I go through our photos actually, and there's not many of me.
No.
There's lots of my husband and her, but not many of me.
It's normally in a family, there's one person that's never in the photos because they're the ones taking the photos, and it usually is the mum. Not always, not every family. Some families it's the dad, but normally it's the mum. They're not in them, and it doesn't matter, because when your daughter sees photos of you two together or you three together, she's not going to be judging you the way you judge yourself.
It's so true. Honestly, I am terrible. And I think it's for me, it's slightly different because I was an actor and we had to get professional headshots. Now, I don't know anyone who's ever had a professional headshot done, but you have to sit there and it's like, it's just your head. And it's like a turn of the head and a half smile or a smile and a tip your head here. And it takes the fun away. from
Yeah.
having your photo taken. It really does, because you're trying to get a photo that doesn't show anything and yet shows everything.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
what?
You have
So
to say a lot with one frame, whereas in a video you have 24 frames per second or 30, depending on the resolution of what you're using. But yeah, it's in one photo, in one frame, you have to say a lot.
yeah,
But yeah, I honestly don't think I've ever had an adult come to a shoot and say, I feel comfortable in front of the camera. I don't think I've ever had one. In fact, I'd say all of them go out of their way to let me know a few times that they're really uncomfortable in front of the camera. Children are different, they're fine. But adults, no, none of them. Starting with myself, I'm
yeah.
not comfortable in front of the camera. But then normally what I try to do is make those shoots as comfortable as possible and easygoing, so that it doesn't feel like what you just described. And normally you see throughout the progress of a shoot how they start easing up, and it doesn't matter anymore that I'm taking photos, because not every photo is important. And you start subconsciously realizing that not every photo I'm taking is going to make it to the gallery at the end. And you hear me clicking away, so you're sure that, oh, come on, one of them has to be good, you know. I think at least subconsciously, you know, those thoughts go there. And then, you know, obviously, if you don't like them, you don't have to use them. You know, it's ultimately it's your choice. Everybody does, thankfully, up until now. But but yeah, that's the idea, that it's comfortable, that it's easygoing.
I'd like to know about the leap, and then I'm going to ask you about people who've inspired you, but I'd love to know the leap that you went. I mean, I know the reason why you went into from filmmaking to family photography. You know, that's powerful. But I'd love to know what took you into the film industry. Obviously, I've got a huge love for that industry, but I'm wondering what took you there.
I realised, and I think I've always known this. It's I love telling stories. I love communicating, and I love telling stories. And I'm writing a book. It's non-fiction, and it's about creativity, and how creativity has declined in children in the last couple of decades. When there's been research about it, it's declining. And what's always been known is that as we grow, we lose it. So, but at the same time, that's what we need for innovation and to move forward and to solve every single thing. Every single problem in the world is solved through creativity. I'd say that's the one overlapping skill of anything that happens, anything that's good in the world has a bit of creative genius in it, no matter what industry it comes from. So the book is about how to save that creativity, and parents helping their children retain and it's retain and grow that creative genius. And you know, if in the process the parents can help their own creative genius grow, fantastic. But it's aimed at the kids. And during that process, I've realized that when I was looking back, I'm at home at my parents at the moment. When I was 12, I wrote what I thought was a novel. It was, I mean, looking at it, it's barely a short story, but I was writing a novel. You know, I was sitting at a computer typing a novel, and saving it on a floppy disk and printing it. You know, but it was a novel in my mind. You know, it's terrible. It's got all the cliches of what I was reading at the time, but anyway. And that's what I wanted to do. So I went on to study English language and literature as a degree, but also filmmaking. So, you know, and people thought, why are you doing those two things? They're quite unrelated, because they on the face of it, they did look very unrelated, because over here it wasn't called English language and literature, it was called something more like English studies. So it looks more like, oh, you're going to be an English teacher, you know, teach English as a foreign language. So, you know, for many people, those seemed like very, very different things. And I said, no, they're all about understanding how people communicate in plots, and and how to tell stories. So I think the underlying thing of everything I've ever done is either me telling stories or helping others communicate and express themselves. So, and that's in everything. That's in the film industry. That's in the language school, definitely. That was at a very literal level. With the photography as well, it's about telling family stories or business stories. The theatre school is helping children express themselves and grow up to be confident to speak up. And I can see that's the underlying thing there of everything I do and I've done.
I love it. And particularly, I would love to shout out to somebody in central government right now and go, maths, really? Really? What about creativity? Because out the box thinking, creativity, I'm a creative and I do everything I can to empower that creative mind. We look at Einstein, who was dyslexic, who was also creative. And it drives me nuts because I was terrible at maths. I'm absolutely appalling. I missed, because of glandular fever, a whole term, maybe even 2 terms of maths, and I've never caught up. And so maths is a complete and utter, oh my goodness, I don't get it. But the creative mind, playing those stories, thinking outside the box, that is what creative thinking drives. Sorry, I better get off my rant and my soapbox. But yes, and I saw your post yesterday and I thought, yeah, I applaud you on that, because creativity, the funding has been cut. I have to get off my soapbox, but the funding's been cut to the arts, and the funding has been cut to drama in school. And drama in school, you can workshop your emotions, you can free up how you are feeling, you can use improvisation to absolutely things that are happening that are really driving you crazy. You can workshop it out in a safe environment, and yet all the funding's been cut. So I have to get off my soapbox.
Yeah, and especially in trying times, and we're all acting as if the pandemic is over, and while it's mainly over, maybe in the medical sense, it's not over in many other senses. And one of them is the fact that children have missed out on so much, and one of the things they've missed out of is any sort of enrichment programs that school might have had in place before the pandemic, because the focus has been only on maths and literacy, and everything else has been left to the side. Even to this day, in term 1, my daughter did not do an art assignment at all in school.
Oh my goodness.
She's 9. let me add that, at age 9. No.
I'm really pleased my daughter's not there. She's at a school where they have, thankfully, they have embraced that creativity, but it is very a slightly different way of educating, and it's not Steiner. It's just a different way, and that that emotional connection is seen as really, really important. And I've just seen Dr. Jenny say I was not good at maths, but brilliant at creativity. And you look at how brightly Dr. Jenny shines, and looking at you, looking at 90% of the guests on the Wise Why, we look at Akeen, who is a thought leader, and yet he trained in film. And this is what people miss. They miss. Yeah, well, as I said, I'll get off my soapbox, but people miss how important creativity is for innovation. Innovation would not happen without it. Data does not drive it.
No, especially not data pushing, and ticking boxes and stuff like that. But yeah, no. I need to add that my daughter is no longer in that school.
Well done, you. And that brings me on to you putting your daughter first, which not without you being nourished. And that's really important that we remember as parents, we have to nourish ourselves, because if we don't nourish ourselves, we can't actually be there for our children. But I love that you've done what you've done for your daughter. So again, brave, strong, and inspirational. So
Thank you. No, she has always come first, and she's been an inspiration for a lot of things. So including, for example, the theatre school. The theatre school launched in September 2020, so we'd gone through lockdown, that first really hard one. And one of the things I noticed, my daughter is an extrovert. So she gets her energy through other people, through being with other people. And all of a sudden, her she's a very confident person. And all of a sudden, all of that was sort of shattered. And I thought, oh, I need to help her somehow. I can't rely only on third parties now to sort this. So, the decision had been taken before, but it was definitely a driver to say, because there was the option of maybe not launching in September 2020. There was an option of deferring that launch to September 2021, which would have been a much safer bet. But I thought, to hell with safety, there are more important things in life than safety. So I just went ahead and did it, and opened at that particularly trying time, which wasn't easy, obviously, because then we endured two more lockdowns that affected us. But we went online, and it was fine. Actually, it was fine, and it was actually really, really welcome by the kids who did join us. Most of them did, because that was their highlight of the week coming in. So some of them would join us even an hour early, just to hang out with their teacher and the other kids, and it was just their highlight of the week. So definitely, yeah, my daughter has definitely been a driver for everything.
We were just talking about that before we came live, because I was saying the driving force for launching this was, as a small business owner, I lose that coffee chat, that get to the office, grab a coffee, grab your colleague, go for a walk, and have a bit of a chin wag before you sit down at your desk. And I really miss that as a small business owner, and that is what drove this decision to create the Wise Why. Was there were lots of other things, but one of them was I wanted that coffee morning chat, because I miss my colleagues. People don't realize when you've been in an organization, particularly when you've been an actor, you are always part of a cast. So you're always part of a team. And so not being in a team became really difficult for me. And so thank you for joining me for my coffee this morning, which brings me on to who has inspired you.
Oh, lots of people. I get inspiration from lots of people from all walks of life, and for different reasons. Sometimes it's something of their personal life. For example, when I started the language school, so that was I was employed at that time. It wasn't my own business. I was flown to Miami by a company that wanted to hire me. I just launched the language school, to run something there for them, that had to do with film, not with photography or languages or anything else. And I met, it was a family run business, a Spanish family based in Miami. And I loved them. I loved the family. I loved how they ran their family, how they run it, and how they'd got to that point. And we became really good friends. I didn't take the offer because I just started the language school and I thought it wasn't the right time. But we're still very good friends. But just looking at the way they'd run their lives and they'd run their business and their family is super inspiring, even to this day, which is, I don't know, 10 years later, or I don't know how long later. And things have changed so much for them and me. But I still look at them in awe, and what they continue to achieve. But it's not maybe directly related to what I do, not in any way, but just looking at what they were doing and how they approached things in a very human way. Even when they worked with huge corporates, but their approach was always very personal, and I love that. And I don't know, lots of people I get inspiration from lots of people. My grandma, for example, she passed away during the pandemic, not from COVID, but and she was 96, I think. So, you know, she led a long life, but she's an inspiration for completely different reasons. She was someone who never fulfilled her potential, because she came from, you know, a different time, and a time where a woman was meant to be a certain person. But she was a rebel, and she rebelled a lot of things she rebelled against, but not everything. And you can tell that those parts that she didn't rebel against, she was then frustrated about later on in life. And that's inspiring to me. It's like, well, actually, you know, don't leave anything there, because you're gonna, even if it's small, you're gonna take it to your grave, you know. So, you know, I take inspiration from different things in different stages, and but yeah, there's lots of different types of inspiration out there.
I'm going to go back to brave. I'm going to say this. You are so brave. You literally embrace life. You jump into that rabbit hole. You have no idea how it's going to come out, but you come up and you rise, and you are absolutely inspiring. I'm not going to ask about aha moments, because we've heard lots along the way, and you are absolutely, I said, brave. What I'd love you to do is you get to ask me a question. Now, I've got no idea. I always worry. I have this little fear when I get to this point where what are they going to ask? But you get to ask me a question which I've got no idea what it's going to be.
Okay. It's not for me personally, but lately, and thinking about, you know, that age group 16 to 25 kind of, and, you know, that generation, I feel is a very difficult, that they're living through a very difficult time. And the pressure on academics, for example, even just saying that children have to do maths until 18, even if it's not going to happen, because I doubt it's going to happen. It's definitely not going to happen in the next few years. But just saying that puts a lot of pressure in that age group. So my recommendation to you, my question to you would be, what would you recommend a 16-year-old today who doesn't like school, who doesn't want to continue studying? What would your recommendation for them be? What should they do?
So that's really interesting, because there's lots of options, and I don't think people realise what the options are. So you don't have to go to college. You don't have to go to university. You can do, if you want to, you can become an apprentice. So you can find something that you're passionate about and you become an apprentice. You could do what one of my friends did, which she worked in Waitrose. And she sat and worked in Waitrose. Sorry, shouldn't have said that. Worked in a shop for a good couple of years while she worked out what she wanted to do. At 16 to 25, your brain is not formed yet. It's not completed. You know, you're very grown up. And I remember thinking I ruled the world at 16. And at 16, I was working in a department store, which no longer exists, called Orders. I was also acting in between things. I was also studying musical theatre, but I didn't like musical theatre. But I knew I didn't want to go and do A levels, because that was more academia and it didn't work for me. So I went onto the musical theatre course and did lots of step changes and flip changes and pirouettes. Learned how to sing, and I went off at 19 and did a musical 42nd Street tour. And as soon as that finished, I hung up my shoes. So I would say, if you were 16 to 25, live. If you want to travel the world, give yourself permission to travel the world. If you want to work in a supermarket, give yourself permission to work in a supermarket. If you want to sit on the crossroads and do nothing, give yourself permission to do it. And if you want to become an apprentice, go and do it. If you want to try being a footballer, or try being a dancer, or try being a seamstress, try it. Because the person I was at 16 to the person I am at 51 is completely different. You know, if I had known at 16 years old, even 25 years old, 25, I was married for the first time. But if I had known at 25 that I was going to be remarried, the mother of a 6-year-old, and running my own business at 51, I would have laughed. I would have absolutely loved myself, even 10 years ago. So I would say life evolves, go live it. Don't get stuck down at 16, 25. Just go and live and experience life, because that's going to take you forwards. But that's just me. I'm not saying that's the right thing. But what I would say is give yourself permission Because if you don't give yourself permission, you're going to load yourself with the, I should be doing this. I must do that. People want me to do that. And it's the same thing I say to business owners. This is your business. This is your vision. This is your life. It is yours. So go live it. Yeah, obviously stay within the law. I'm not saying go out there and I'm not saying go out there and do something silly, but I am saying live and experience, because that experience will take you forwards in life. But
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's the right answer.
I
Good
agree.
question.
And it doesn't change much later on in life, whatever you do at 16, whether you go to college or not. I mean, yeah, I don't think it changes much.
So I'm going to ask you the same thing then. What would you say? Because I think that's a great way to end. Because I've just said, yeah, go give yourself permission. What about you? Your ideas on that?
Well, having tutored lots of children that age, especially I've tutored lots of children that were out of school for a number of reasons. Those reasons normally came under two categories. Either they couldn't go because they were ill, or they were excluded. And the push was the same. And it's like, how can it be the same? They are completely different, and they are out of school for completely different reasons. And the push can't be the same. The push should be completely different. And pushing them is making the problem worse instead of better. And I'm brought here as a solution, and I'm only making the problem worse. But I obviously tried to steer it in a way that actually helped, but yeah, so I would probably tell them to find something to do. I would probably not recommend them to, if they wanted to not do anything. I think greatness or whatever ideas come from action. So I'd say do something, whatever, but do something. Don't stay at home and watch TikToks, go out, do something, whatever that is, is it I don't know, joining a football club and training little children all day long, or is it working at a shop, or is it whatever it is, but go out and do it, and you'll find your path. Paths will open up, but they won't open up if you're not, if you're stuck at home. That's not going to happen. So I'd probably tell them to go find something to do.
Good advice.
That sounds worse than it is, but
no, you are right. I mean, I said if you want to do nothing, but at the same time, doing nothing leads to inactivity. And you are right. If you do something, the path will open up. And Dr. Jenny says living is learning, and it's true. If you live your life, no matter how, not no matter how you live it, because you've got to live sensibly, but if you're living your life and you experience life, you learn, and the synaptics in your brain all go off, and it's just wonderful. And the person I am today is not the person I was then. And I think knowing that that's the wisdom that we have when we're old bags like me. But as being an old woman, the crone, as they like to call her, I get to sit here and go, well, I didn't know what. Yeah, at 16, I had completely different plans to where I am now. And when I was 16, if a 51-year-old woman had said that to me, I'd have gone, yeah, you know nothing, you're just old. But actually, there is a lot to be said about wisdom. So, yeah, I have loved this chat. I really have. I will ask you to pop into the chat your website. So drop it in so people can see it. I will upload this onto the website so people can get in contact with you. But I love your work, and thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here. And yeah, I'm very happy to have spoken to you this morning.